We are back in 1997, continuing our look at the Spawn toy line by McFarlane Toys. The last time we checked out Spawn Series 8 was last year during the 4 weeks of Halloween, where we took a look at the Gravedigger. This time we're kicking off the 5 weeks of Halloween with the Gatekeeper, here on Creed's Collection. Welcome, foolish mortals, to another episode of Creed's Collection and the 5 weeks of Halloween. I am your host, Creed, and today we're taking a look at the Gatekeeper from the 1997 Spawn toy line by McFarlane Toys. As you can see, I have him in the package, and he is from Series 8, as we established earlier. You can see the Gatekeeper here through the window in addition to a bunch of accessories. And here's the back of the package where you can see the whole of Series 8 as well as Gravedigger, who we did last year. And then here are other Spawn toys as well as some instructions on how to set up the figure and a file card we'll come back to a little later. But now watch in horror as I open this 25-year-old toy. And at last, the Gatekeeper is free of his plastic prison. Let's just get him off the tray. The Gatekeeper is one of Malebolgia's most loyal servants, and an evil force to be reckoned with. He is a heavily armed warrior who wields several bladed weapons to guard the entrance to the Darklands. The Gatekeeper only allows those who have been personally selected by his Dark Lord to enter, and takes brutal action when uninvited guests appear. His right hand is missing, and in its place is a trident that can be fired with deadly accuracy. This, along with mastery of his fearsome swords, make him perfectly suited for his grim task. And now that we know a bit more about the Gatekeeper, let's take a closer look. Like many figures from McFarlane's Spawn toy line, the Gatekeeper appears to be a zombie or an animated corpse. Here underneath his included hood, which is removable, you can see that his face is incredibly gruesome. He's got a metal plate over his eye, you can see part of his brain through his skull, and he just generally looks disgusting, which I love. You can see here that he has a big scar on his chest, kind of like Frankenstein, and some cool armor here on his shoulder. Also, here are spikes on his arm, an excellent looking belt, nice little bracer here on his forearm, which I like. He's got an open hand here for holding his weapons. And on his right arm, he has a giant blade, and he also is missing his hand, and in place of it is a trident, which can be fired off via this button. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. As we come down to his legs, you can see that he does have cool looking chainmail underneath this green armor plating. And over here he's just got regular pants. His boots look slightly different. This one looks a little more modern, whereas this one over here looks a little more medieval. And I noticed that right down here he's got a gun on his leg. And I wonder why he doesn't use that more. Who knows? But overall, I really like this figure despite the lack of his gun being removable from the holster. And you can see here on the back, he actually has a pretty cool cape. It's pretty simple, but it is made out of cloth. And that's one thing I like about McFarlane, is he always includes some cloth goods on his figures, and it goes a long way in my opinion. Alright, it's accessory time, so we're going to start with his hood, which has all kinds of weird metal sticking out of it. It is got a nice burlap texture to it, and the front of the hood's right here. His head looks out from there. And I like this. I also like that they sculpted in the little, extra fabric hanging over there. And it fits on his head pretty good. I mean, as long as you don't mess with him. It would fall off, but for display purposes, I think it looks pretty sweet. Here is Gravedigger's smaller sword, which has a weird industrial look to it, and it's got a nice curve to the blade. And there's a little peg right here on the handle. If I flip it over, you'll see it. There it is. And that's actually how you peg it into his hand. You can see the hole right there in his palm, which is where, of course, you put the peg. And this system works pretty good, and it's pretty standard for McFarlane figures. Check it out. He's going to cut you down. You better watch it. And conveniently, if you look here on his back, there is a spot to put the sword in case you don't want him to be holding it. I love when you can store the weapons on the figure. Next up, we have this giant hooked sword, and it's got a nice handle here. And it's also got the same peg system and this hook on the end, which I love. Serrated blade, super cool. But it does have this weird techno looking stuff on the blade, which I don't quite get, but I still think this is pretty dope. Here it is in his hand, looking incredibly menacing. And if you look right here, there is a hole which allows you to hook it to his leg if you want. Just like that. And it looks pretty good. My only real complaint with his weapons is they should be just as rusty as I am after not doing an episode of Creed's Collection for so long. Wow, can you believe it? There's finally a new episode of Creed's Collection. Yes, it is most pleasing. Do you think there's going to be a skit in this episode? Hey, Skeletor. What? This is the skit. What? I can't believe it. I get to be in the first skit after such a long break. It wasn't very funny. Gee, Skeletor, tell me how you really feel. Well, anyway, on to the staff of the Gatekeeper. You can see that he's got a lot of cool, material wrapped around it, and there's all these gnarled spikes hanging out of it, and this piece right here allows you to peg it to his hand like so, just like all the other weapons, although I have to say this is probably my least favorite one of all of them. Last but not least, we're taking a look at his trident. It's got the 3 prongs on the end, as you can see, and this is what plugs into his wrist to fire out. You simply take it, and there's the hole. Just stick it inside. It'll click into place, and then you actually have a little button here that you push to fire it, which let's go ahead and do that now. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, now we're going to take a look at his articulation. Starting with the knees, he does have roughly a 90-degree bend. And then here at the hip, he also has a bend forward, but unfortunately his armor does get in the way. So that's about as far as it'll go. Here at the waist, he does have a swivel, which I really like if you keep up with my channel. Now here at his shoulder, he does have a full 360 degrees of movement if you want. And he also has a roughly 90-degree bend here at the elbow. On the other arm, he has a shoulder joint as well, but he also has a swivel here at the elbow instead of a bend. He also has a swivel at his wrist. And last but not least, he has a head that can look left and right. And that is it. That covers all 11 points of articulation for Gatekeeper. Here's a quick look at Gatekeeper's file card. If you'd like to read it, pause now. And now for our He-Man size comparison. While He-Man is a little bit shorter than Gatekeeper, as usual, McFarlane toys really feel like they belong in the Masters of the Universe world. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my toy retrospective for the Gatekeeper from the 1997 Spawn toy line by McFarlane Toys. And with this video, the 5 weeks of Halloween are underway. Expect a minimum of 5 spine-tingling toy reviews, including one on October 31st, Halloween night. Will there be more than 5? Only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a thumbs up, and if you have any thoughts, please leave a comment. I love reading and responding to them. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It's free, I would certainly appreciate it, and it helps my channel grow. I release my toy retrospective videos on Wednesdays, so I hope to see you next week and every week after, here on Creed's Collection.